Hello, everybody. Today we are switching gears. No more watercolor paint, no more oil pastels. It's time for tempera paint. Tempera paint is a little different. It's been around for a long time. In fact, let's check out this presentation. I'll teach you a little bit about what tempera paint is, and then we'll learn how to use it, how to mix it, and how to make some a value scale and some tints and some shades. So check this out. Tempera paint. Some people call it egg tempera because really what you have is some pigment, some stuff like this. Ooh, let's fast forward here. Some powdered pigment, that we find on this earth. And if you add an egg yolk to it and mix it up, you essentially get tempera paint. Now, I don't know that the big manufacturers are still cracking open eggs and mixing it all together. Maybe it still does have some egg in it. But they're likely using something, just some chemical compound that emulates, um, egg. But the purist, the orthodox artist, probably still does buy some pigment, add some egg to it, and you could make your own. It's been around for a long time. So all you really need is some powdered pigment or powdered paint, add some egg, mix it up, and voila, there you go. So it comes in all different sizes and all different colors. This was really the primary method of painting until around 1500. Then oil painting came around, and oil painting changed everything. It was a game changer because you didn't have to have just solid areas of color. Then you could do like thin glazes of color, and you could overlap colors on top of colors so they're transparent, and you could get people's faces to really glow and look more realistic. And then came acrylic paint. That's a really relatively new type of paint. Of course, watercolor was in the mix in there somewhere. But it's just a different paint medium. I'll be honest with you, it's not my favorite. I don't use it a lot. I just, all artists have their preferences, but some artists do. Like these artists, for example. You might even recognize a couple of these. In the upper left, we have Venus on a half shell. Forgive the partial nudity there, but that's a famous work of art. Maybe you know the one in the lower right, Christina's World. In fact, we have a reproduction done by the humanities class who made that, and it's just outside of our cafeteria here at Salem. So, those are all done in tempera paint. It's a very viable, very practical, paint medium. I just have my own preferences. I like watercolor, and then oils, and then acrylics, and then tempera. But I'm not trying to sell you or deter you from finding your own preferences. You might really like tempera paint. What we're going to do with tempera paint today is do some monochromatic painting. We're basically going to use one color, and we're going to add some white to it, and we'll add some black to it. But we're just going to do some things with one color before we get too complex with tempera paint. So just a reminder of what monochromatic is. Stuff like this, essentially you look at the work of art and you say, well, that's all blues, light blues, dark blues, medium blues, So what we're going to do is take a pure color. You see that on the right, a pure color. We call that the hue, H-U-E. And we're not going to mess with tones today. Tone is when you add both white and black and you get a gray, and you add that to it and you get a tone. What it does is it tones down the color, kind of mutes the color, saps all of its energy away. But we're going to add some black to a color. We're going to add some white to a color and get some tints and some shades, just so we're all on the same terminology, okay? So, for example, here's kind of a light yellowish orange, looks like a school bus orange. And if you add white to it, we call that a tint. If you add gray, then that's a tone. Just remember, it tones down the intensity of the color. And of course, if you add black, then it's a shade. That makes sense. You shade it, it gets darker, shaded. So even people in the digital world know this stuff. You might go to your color picker if you're doing some illustration digitally, and you always have your color, but they always include the tints of that color, like pink up here, or they might include a tone of that color, something in here where it's a very muted red, or a shade of that red, like a sort of a maroon color down here. So you could put your cursor or your arrow wherever you want and do a quick color picking, or you could go for the pure hue right up here in the upper right, okay? So digital folks know this stuff too. So what we're gonna do today is just a little warm-up activity to understand tempera paints, how thick, how thin they are, how they clean up with water, how they work. Another unique thing about tempera paint is most paint, when you paint it, it's lighter at first and then it dries a little bit darker. everything from acrylic paint to house paint, watercolor paint in general, because the light and how it hits that paint, it just looks a little brighter and lighter. And then when it dries, it gets a little darker. Tempera paint, that's the one that's a little different. It actually starts out a little darker and then dries lighter. It's just different. So that's maybe one of the frustrations I have with it. I'm always trying to maybe match the right color. And well, you might have to like paint it a little bit darker. I'm sorry, a little bit lighter. It's frustrating. Anywho, I've given you this worksheet. If you don't have one, you can go to your sketchbook and you'll find it right in there as soon as we're starting tempera paint in that section. So you've got your own printable one. I've got one right here next to me. So I'm going to stop sharing this presentation and show you mine underneath my document camera. Now what I've got here is that sheet. I've also got some paper towel here so that I can blot and get my paintbrush nice and dry. I might even fold this over and really push on the paintbrush to get all the water out, because I don't want to mix water with this. These are not watercolors. I mean, you can mix water with them. They are water-based. So when it comes to cleaning your brush, you can use water and you can thin them. But in general, we just use them full strength and don't add water to the paint. Okay. Now I'm using a square brush today because I like that it has long straight sides and it's flat up front. I mean, it's a flat brush, that's what we call it. And that's going to be really helpful when it comes to filling in these sections. I mean, if you prefer to use a round, you can, but I sometimes think getting the right brush rather for the job is the way to go. Now I've got a little mixing plate here. If you have a blank palette like this, that would be great, but don't wash out your watercolors. Please do not do that. Keep your watercolors in your palette. Or you could use a paper plate, or heck, you could use a piece of paper to do this, but you need something to mix on. Now, I've got a lot of white and a lot of black here, because the first one I'm going to do is just white and black. So you should really try to pour out just a little bit, something a little size of maybe a quarter. And for a color, really something even smaller, because we won't need a ton of it. All right, so check it out. This one here says 100% white, so I'm just going to dip in. That's pretty easy, and I'm just going to paint it white. Now again, I'm grading this on completion, so it does not have to be perfect. I'm going to try to make mine look pretty, but it doesn't matter if you go outside the lines or it doesn't quite go to the edges. Who cares? All right, next up, I'm going to make my first little tint of gray here. I'm going to make a gray. Maybe I'll start right in the middle. No, I'm going to do it this way. I'm going to go and just grab the tiniest bit of black. Oh, just the tiniest bit. I might even add a little white to that. That black is so powerful. There we go. So I've just got some kind of a slightly gray color. Look at that, just a hair darker than the white. All right, I'm just going to grab I'm just putting the corner of this in here, just barely getting a little black, because that black is powerful. Okay, maybe a little bit more. There we go. Ooh, that's really getting dark fast. So you might have to go back and forth, but what we're looking for is what I call a number 3 gray, just something a little bit darker than this previous one we did. You can always go like this and put your brush next to it and say, is that dramatically different? Maybe not. So I add a little more black and darken it up a bit. Let's see what we've got now. Yeah, it looks a little bit darker. Yeah, there we go. So I'm going for a different value. And you can turn your brush sideways if that's helpful to go that way, or go this way. You could use even the corner of your brush if you like. So I think you'll agree that one is a bit darker. Hope I haven't gone too dark too fast, but let's keep going. I'm going to bring in a little bit more white just so I have more paint to mix with, and a little more black. And I'm going for one that's slightly darker than the last. So you get the idea. We're going to go all the way until we get to black at the end. That looks pretty similar. So I need a little more black. Again, I want to caution you just to use little bits of black at a time. Mix it up. That's not dramatically different. Let's do a little bit more. There we go. To be honest, I think I went a little too dark, a little too fast, because this is kind of a medium gray. So I probably should have had a couple more, you know, little steps in here. And boy, now that I look at the underneath the screen, it looks especially dark. Underneath my screen, oh, you guys can't see it the same way I do. It does not look as dark as it does here. It just looks darker based on the camera. You have to trust me on that one. But it's also a good lesson. These should be really light, slow steps. So I'm going to add a little more black. And just take that up a notch. That looks a bit darker. Add a little bit more. So you get the idea. Trying to go one step darker than the last one. I know for you guys at home, that probably looks about the same, but you have to trust me. It looks like black on screen right now. So this document camera isn't doing what I'd really like, but what I see is it's almost a middle gray. So again, you'll just have to trust me on that. I wonder if I could just show it differently here. It doesn't really show very different. But and over here, it looks a lot lighter. These two look almost like black, both of them. But here is a nice middle gray. And one thing you're doing when you're mixing this, you should mix on one side of your brush and then turn your brush over and really make sure that everything is getting mixed nicely. Let's see here. Yes, that is a nice middle gray. And I know it looks black to you. Again, you're just gonna have to trust me. It's not that dark. And you just keep going all the way down until you do get eventually to black, and you'll use a solid black. So I'm not going to complete this whole thing because I think you get it. But again, you just have to trust me. I wish this showed differently because it is dramatically lighter. All right, I'm going to rinse my brush out. Maybe this will be more obvious with this next one I'm going to do. So I'm really tapping my brush vigorously right here, right out in the bottom of my cup. So if you could see down into the bottom of the cup, it's just flexing those bristles until it's flat like that. And then I'm going to use my paper towel and get my brush really dry. You could pull it this way, or you could kind of squeeze, or even pull the water out like we did with watercolor, but get it really dry. All right, next up, we're going to do the same thing with the white and the red. So I'm going to start again with white and put that right here. And so the first one we did was really just a value scale, just using gray. But now it's time to make, oh, this red is really powerful. Just a little, oh, that's too much already. That looks like about my third stage. I want something lighter than that. So let's do it over here. That's pretty light. But I could go even one stage lighter. I'm going to pick up some more pink and do another one over here. So now I've got some different, there we go. All right, here is my lightest little pink. It's like an Easter egg pink, really light, and pastel is what you might call it. All right, let's make this a little darker. Here's a little bit more intense pink. Notice I'm turning my brush over. Let's add a little bit more to that. There we go. Slightly darker pink. And you just keep adding just a touch of red. That might even be too much. Boy, it's gonna get really dark really fast. Let's do this one. Yes. That's a good old pink right there. And just a touch more red. almost at a pure red. You'll notice I like to add the red to the white. If you add this white to this red, it's not going to hardly do a thing. Here we are. That is a bright pink. So if you're finding you're getting a bit of a dry brush, you could turn your brush over. The belly of that brush is probably loaded with some more paint on the other side. Now I'm going to clean my brush because it's time for the pure red, the pure hue. So I'm going to squeeze this out of my brush and just go with straight up red here. There we go. One thing you'll notice about these is just how quick they dry. Oh yeah, these are already dry up here in the almost my tints, tones, and shades. Only takes a few minutes. There we go. And now it's time to add a little bit of black. So I'm just going to add a touch of black. The black is also powerful. And I'm just trying to not make this that bright red, but just add a little bit to darken it up. There we go. That looks more like a blood red. Just a little darker than the pure red hue. And let's just add a touch more. I think you get the idea. You're just going to add little bits. And you don't want to go too fast, too far too fast. But I do want this to be darker than the last color. Maybe a touch more. Ooh, that black changes it quick. I think you'll find that black and red are some of the most powerful when it comes to mixing colors. So I'm starting to get to kind of a maroon color here, or a good scarlet red. To you, I know, I see it looks black, but you have to trust me. I see on mine, gosh, I wish it would show differently, just what I'm looking for, just a nice deep red. So you just keep going, and I think I'm not gonna do the whole thing, but eventually you clean your brush, and the last one you do is black. There we go, let's get this nice and clean. So that will go on the end here. Of course, I have a couple more to do, but I'm just gonna show you kind of the end product here. Ooh, I've got a little bit of water in my brush. I should have squeezed that out a bit better. See, that's, well, you guys can't see that. Lucky for you. This looks solid black. I see a little bit of watery gray in there. I've made it like a watercolor. So of course, yes, I want to finish those two up. Now for the last one, pick a different color. It could be yellow, green, blue, whatever you like, and try the same thing, just so you really get this, color mixing down. So this is what we call, value and monochromatic color mixing. Once you get a handle on this, you're going to be in good shape for understanding tempera paint. All right, I'm assuming you guys can finish this up. That is today's lesson. Good luck.